Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi with Retail Insider. Joining me today is Liza Amlani, who is principal and founder of the Retail Strategy Group. Thanks for joining us today, Liza.
Very happy to be here. I'm also co-founder of the Merchant Life, in case that comes up later.
Okay, super. Thanks for telling me that.
Of course.
Let me ask you, first of all, we've been in a very challenging environment, obviously, in the last 2 years or so. What do retailers have to do now to, if they're still around, what do they have to do now to survive and thrive in this environment?
I mean, that's a loaded question.
Yeah.
So, I'll focus on merchandising and planning, which is my wheelhouse. So no matter the vertical, I believe that we need to invest in merchants and planners. I believe that 2022 is the year that we're going to do that. And the reason I say that is because, I've said this before, that I think that planners were really put in the spotlight, especially at the start of the pandemic, when we realized that we weren't serving customers with the categories that they were looking for as they shifted into work from home. So whether we talk about apparel or we talk about furniture and hard goods, or even gardening and DIY, we're finding that this, across all verticals, that planners were really questioned for the most part about how they were forecasting and planning product, as well as how far they were planning out into the season. So when we think of apparel, we're looking at, unless you are ultra fast fashion like Shane, Boohoo, or, the now defunct Misguided. But, generally we're thinking about 52 weeks to from concept to market. Furniture is about 2 years. Footwear is almost 2 years. Innovation and lead time calendars, we're looking at 3 to 4 years. So when we think about the consumer shifts in behavior, we can't react. We're tying up all of our open to buy into planning so early that we don't even have the open to buy to release to react to those shifts in the consumer. So I would say that the biggest investment that retailers, no matter the vertical, no matter the channel, what we're going to do is invest more in merchandising and planning and product creation to better predict what the customer is looking for closer to market.
So what are the biggest mistakes you think that retailers made in the past 2 years?
Well, I think the retail tech explosion, let's call it acceleration, of the last couple of years should have got retailers thinking differently. Mm-hmm. And thinking that they can go back to pre-pandemic ways of working, ways of connecting with the customer and planning assortments. If they think that they can go back in time, they will definitely fail. And the reason I'm saying this is not only because consumers have a lot more options globally to shop from, a lot more channels to shop from, whether it's social commerce, Instagram, e-com, or Meta, right? I mean, I think that, no matter the channel, customers have a lot more options, and they are empowering themselves with making the right choices that align with their own values. So if they align with sustainability, which we are seeing a huge shift into, as it should be, and ethical ways of product creation, I think we're going to see that is going to be the catalyst to cause that shift in retail planning, merchandising, product creation. The consumer is going to cause that shift because they're not going to accept the status quo anymore.
Yeah, exactly. What are the biggest challenges you think retailers are facing, like right now?
I would say right now, I think that the biggest challenge, of course, returns is a huge challenge. But if you think about it, that's the output of ways of working.
Yeah.
So if we were able to understand better how to serve the customer with delightful product at the right time, at the right place, in the right channel, even going a bit deeper, at the right size, then we would have less returns. And we could also understand our customer better by talking to them and capturing insights, whether it's through talking to them and walking the shop floor, which I don't think we do enough of. Yeah. And of course, visiting websites and going through that customer journey yourself as a retailer then I think you're truly going to understand what is the friction, what are the pain points, and how do we solve for them to make that customer shopping experience seamless.
Okay, when we talk about customer shopping experience, one of the issues obviously that's been in play in the last couple of years is supply chain and issues with product, right? You know, it's great to have product, you know, you're selling product, but if you can't get it to the customer, you know, who cares, right?
Exactly.
Do you think that that supply chain issue is going to remain a challenge for retailers in the
Yes,
foreseeable future?
I do. And I think this also comes down to changing and shifting and rethinking the way we go to market.
Hmm.
And once we start to do that and understanding where our raw materials are coming from, how they're being sourced, how many touch points are there before the product even gets to the factory to manufacture and produce and put together. And then, of course, we have a continuation of that supply chain, which is freight forwarders, distribution centers, which ties into labor. I mean, there are still a lot of challenges out there. We have not solved the supply chain chaos problem by any means. In fact, what we've done is identified all of the friction points that the retailer has when they are going from concept to market. And if we don't change some of those ways of how we go to market, and we don't get smarter about how we go to market and what product we put out there, that supply chain challenge is not going to go away. And I think the other thing to remember is that when we think of the supply chain, we have to think of all the components in the supply chain. You know, starting from cotton farms to the mills to textile innovation and creation. And of course, you know, things like nearshoring and looking at your vendor base and seeing, you know, where are you putting all your eggs in one basket? And that's why you're having supply chain issues, because all the ports around you are closed and, you know, there's no truckers. So, I mean, there's a lot of nuances and facets to think about when you think about the supply chain, because your supply chain is your concept to market.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, of course, to the customer.
Yeah, and of course, you know, another, you know, supply chain has impacted things like prices for consumers, and then of course there's other issues with fuel and energy, et cetera, et cetera. You know, what are the impacts, do you think, on the rising costs of product these days? What do you think that that's going to do to consumer spending and behavior as we go forward?
Well, I think, you know, let's start with the consumer behavior part, because that's something we're experiencing today with inflation. And of course, you know, the recent announcement about, you know, interest rates rising. So I think all that is definitely impacting consumer spending. If we look at where consumers are spending their money, they're spending on luxury items, they're spending on off price, and they're looking for deals. Absolutely. They're also looking for brands that have, you know, a wow factor or a differentiator, like sustainable brands or brands that are that align with customer values. I think that's what's happening right now. We are seeing an increase in spend in certain categories like formal wear, and of course, you know, as we start getting back into the world, you know, a lot more dresses are selling, more heels, wedges. So we're looking at a shift in categories that our consumers are spending on. But I will say that consumers are still looking for value. I mean, we saw an increase, you know, Costco announced the increase of memberships. And, you know, I think that's a testament to what's happening with consumer spending. Now, if we think about it from the retailer's point of view, I think it's important to say that raw materials have absolutely increased. The cost of actually shipping goods, physical goods from, you know, places like Asia and Bangladesh and India and any overseas vendors, it's costing us a lot more. Domestically, of course, we're seeing an increase in cost, because if we're looking to nearshore, we're seeing that, you know, the cost of labor is a lot more than, you know, what we would get in Asia. And that's going to impact retail pricing. Absolutely. Somebody has to pay for that. Yeah. Just like at the beginning of the pandemic, when we all shifted to digital and everyone was delivering e-com, we didn't see the impact of the bottom line and the P&L until the season and the year was over. Who's going to pay for this? We don't actually have a line item for who's going to pay for those returns, for example.
Yeah.
As a merchant planner, we see the value of what's returned, but we don't actually go in and say, okay, why was this returned? Do customers not like stripes anymore? I mean, we're not getting down into the data. And I think that is a challenge right now.
As you look at the industry and where it's at today, Liza, what other trends strike you right now?
Trends from a category perspective, I think that, we're still very much into comfort categories. But I think we're shifting into a little bit more formal wear, definitely thinking about, putting our personality into, how we style and what we're wearing. I do believe that the off-price industry is still something that is thriving. And I say that because a lot of retailers are still sitting on excess. So excess has to go somewhere, which I think is a good solution for excess right now, until we figure out how to increase seasonless versus seasonal and fashion. Rethinking the way we go to market from concept. The line plan and the calendar is something I talk about a lot, because I think that's something that hasn't changed. We still spend all that time going to market, but if we actually look through the moments and the activities rolling up to milestones within a calendar of product creation, we still have very, very high overdevelopment of materials, of product, of sampling. We're not using the digital tools as best as we can around either getting faster to market, like digital product creation, digital twins. And of course, we're not investing in technology as much as we should. Smart predictive technology to better help us get insights from the customer, to capture the right data, to ask the right questions, to feed into product creation, merchandising, and planning.
Okay, super. Now, in the last couple of years, obviously, the world's changed and how we work has changed, with the pandemic, more people working outside of the office, in their homes. And as we go on from the pandemic, much of this will continue on, remote work, a hybrid model, perhaps for many companies. What impact will that have on the types of products that are out there that will be in demand, from clothing to, what you have in your home, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, that's actually a great question. Yesterday, we released our latest newsletter, themerchantlife.com, and we actually talked about the parallels between apparel and furniture. So thinking about soft goods and hard goods and how we can learn from each vertical. And the one thing that I will say is that, and I'll say it until, I'll shout it from the mountaintops, is that planning and merchandising needs investment and innovation and digital tools, because we are not planning to the best of our abilities the right product at the right time and in the right place. And that is going to impact what we put into the market and what we're going to see as a result in terms of returns and excess. So this is what we need to get a better handle on, but we need to invest in these tools to help us plan better, buy better, stop overproducing. I think that sustainability is a very common theme amongst the retail community, that we want to invest in ethical ways of working and doing better for our planet. Okay. But the challenge is that a lot of folks don't understand where to start, so they kind of put it on the back burner. But if we start with product creation, merch planning, then we're going to see that how that's going to impact our bottom line. And at the end of the day, what we want to do, we're looking for profit. We want full price sales. And that is what drives retail. It's delightful product at full price sales. Yeah. So what is the art and science combination? I mean, that's where we need to start asking questions so we can solve for right product, right time, right place.
Okay, a little plug in here for yourself. Liza, tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I come from merchandising, product creation, and planning. I spent about 20 years in industry. and shifted into consulting, worked for some great, amazing brands on things like DTC strategies, speed to market, and how to be more responsible when we're going to market with product. The company that I started, co-founded with my partner, called Retail Strategy Group, what we do is we help retailers and brands get faster to market in the most responsible way with the right product. And also have a newsletter called The Merchant Life, which, please subscribe. It's awesome content because it is from a retailer lens. It's about my experiences and what I've learned and how I see the industry changing, because I do believe that if we invest in the right parts of retail, we are going to see those changes. And it's going to impact not only the customer experience, but also what happens behind the scenes in the supply chain, which we talked about earlier.
All right, super. Thanks, Liza, for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, super. That was Liza Amlani, who is principal and founder of the Retail Strategy Group and also behind the Merchant Life. I'm Mario Toneguzzi with Retail Insider. Thanks for joining us today.